A quick warning, there are curse words that are unbeeped in today's episode of the show. If you prefer a beeped version, you can find that at our website, thisamericanlife.org.
From WBZ Chicago, This American Life, I'm Howard Glass. Okay, so you call a hotline, and then a complete stranger tries to figure out how to help you. On the spot. That idea seems to have begun in the 1950s. The first suicide hotline in the United States was created in the early 60s by a guy in San Francisco who was a priest and also a journalist. And it was just him answering the phone at first. Ads on matchbooks and sides of buses said, "Thinking of ending it all? Call Bruce." Which, by the way, was not his real name. His real name was Bernard Mays. But of course, the power of anonymity is so important to any hotline. People would call, and sometimes he could help them precisely because he had no connection to their life at all. Like, they could say anything to him. In those pre-internet days, that was completely new. To harness that kind of anonymity, the intimacy of it. This way, over the phone. These days, of course, there are all kinds of hotlines for people in all sorts of situations. Prayer hotlines, psychic hotlines, also hotlines for homework help, for new moms. There's a hotline for owners of three-legged dogs, and another one specifically for anybody who swallows one of those little round button batteries. That hotline also handles any kid who pushes it up their nose. Today we're going to devote our entire show to one phone call that happened on one hotline. A very unusual hotline. And then we have everything that followed from that one call. It takes you inside this world that I think either you're already in this world or it's totally invisible to you. Like it's all around you. You don't even register that this world is there. Mary Harris tells what happened. She's the host of Slate's daily news podcast, What Next? One quick note, some parts of this phone call might not be great for young children to hear. I suppose I could have given you this warning before mentioning that part about pushing batteries up your nose, but anyway. Here's Mary with Act 1, the call.
The call in this story took place a few years ago.
Thank you for calling.
It's a call to a hotline of sorts, though one I'd never heard about before and was surprised to learn existed. This is the music you hear when you're waiting for an operator.
I tried to break free, you tried to keep me bound. I tried to live right, you tried to keep me down. But now I'm going...
Never use alone, it's Jessie.
Hi, my name's Kimber.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. And let me catch your name one more time.
Kimber.
That's what I thought. Okay.
The woman taking this call, her name's Jessie. She's a nurse, and she's taken thousands of these.
All right, let me get my book, Kimber. I've never talked to you before. I'm glad you called. Have you called us before?
No, this is my first time.
Oh.
I just got out of rehab yesterday, and I don't want to use by myself.
Okay. All right. So, what are you going to use, Kimber, and how are you going to use it?
I'm injecting heroin.
Okay.
Probably fentanyl.
Okay.
The hotline is called Never Use Alone. And the idea is, if you're going to inject heroin or do a speedball, something like that, and there's no one around, you can dial them up. Someone will stay on the line. Make sure you're okay. If it seems like you've overdosed, they'll call the paramedics.
All right, let me get some information, okay, buddy? All right, give me your callback number in case we get disconnected.
Jessie gets the caller's phone number and address, just in case she has to call the ambulance. The caller, Kimber, is in Massachusetts. Jessie is down in Georgia.
You got your door unlocked?
Let me check. Hold on. Yeah, it's unlocked now.
Okay. So make sure I'm on speakerphone.
Yep.
All right. You're by yourself in your home, in your apartment?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have Narcan?
I do.
Set it out for me.
Okay.
And if you've got anything else extra that you don't need to do your job, if you just picked up, if you got some extra rigs, put away anything you don't need, okay?
Okay.
Because God forbid I have to call the ambulance. They'll take your shit when they leave, and I don't want them to do that.
Okay. Hold on, let me put everything away then in the bathroom. There's like a bunch of stuff out.
Yeah, just like close the door, or whatever. Just don't leave it right where you're at. How long have you been abstinent?
About a month.
Okay. So your tolerance is in the dirt, right, baby?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I'll stay on the phone with you. If you want to if you want to do points at a time or half a point at a time, we'll take it as slow as you want. If you would feel better video chatting me, we can do a Jitsi or something, okay?
That's okay.
Okay.
So you can hear, like, in the beginning, I'm upbeat. I'm happy to talk to her.
I spoke with Jessie, the nurse.
But you hear my voice change.
Mm-hmm. What is that?
She was speaking with some speed, with some urgency. I knew she wasn't going to be careful. My mama spirit kicked in immediately. It's a sixth sense that you develop when you do these calls.
When you she's not like connecting with you. She's like, just, I'm here to get this done.
She was there to do a job.
So all I ask you to do is you let me know as soon as you push your first dose. You let me know that you're done.
Well, I have to hold my breath for a second because I have to do it in my neck. So
okay.
I'm not going to be speaking for a second, but I'll let you know.
So
her neck.
Mm-hmm. She's going in. You can inject in your external jugular vein, but to do that, you have to hold your breath.
Is that because you do that when your other veins are blown out?
Mm-hmm.
You're using terminology I don't understand. Like half a point. What does that mean?
When they hopefully weigh their dope, when you weigh your dope out, they're using a scale, and they measure it out in grams. 0.1 is 0 is a tenth of a gram. 0.2, that's drug user lingo for we'll nickel and dime it right on in there.
Small doses are one way to try to stay safe when you're using a drug like heroin or fentanyl. But the truth is, you really have no idea what you're getting if you're buying drugs off the street.
I said I just need a second because I got to find a vein.
That's fine. We're in no rush.
I just have really bad eyes, so it's really hard to do.
Oh God, Lord, yeah.
But all the veins on my arms are shot.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm pushing it in.
All right, slow and easy, baby.
All right, I'm pushing and I'm letting the tourniquet go.
Okay, baby.
Okay, I think I'm okay. I'm good.
All right, well, we're going to stay on the phone for about 5 minutes, okay?
Okay.
And then if you want to do more, then you can do a little bit more, okay?
Sometimes a person will call in wanting to talk. With her regulars, Jessie knows the names of their pets, keeps track of their birthdays. But her main job is just to stay on the line and check in every now and then. For this call, she was sitting at her kitchen table. Her husband walks in at some point for help with a Ziploc bag. But every minute or so, she's trying to get a read on Kimber.
You good?
Yeah.
Okay.
About 60 seconds later, Jessie checks in again.
You okay, honey? Kimber? 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 Kimber, I'm going to call your name about one more time, and I'm calling an ambulance. Kimber? Kimber? You better answer me. Kimber?
What are you thinking in this moment?
I'm hoping that she just walked away from the phone. I try to give them 30 seconds. 30 of the longest seconds of your life. I try to give them 30 seconds to, oh shit, I'm sorry, I walked away from the phone. Or my earbuds disconnected, or I hit the mute by accident, or that's what I try to do. 30 seconds.
North Adams Public Safety, this line's recorded.
1251 from Northern 911, transferring a operator from the overdose prevention crisis line, requesting ambulance in North Adams, Massachusetts. I have the address of apartment 1 upstairs.
What's the nature of the request?
The caller became unresponsive while on the line with me.
Okay. Do you have any reason to believe they may have taken any narcotics?
We're an overdose crisis line, so it's possible.
Okay, ma'am. Can you give me any specifics in terms of the age of the potential patient?
It's a female. Her first name's Kimber. Kimber.
Okay, we're going to get help en route, ma'am. If you happen to get them back on the line or get anything further, please call us right back, okay?
Okay, yeah, I've got the calls merged in. Yeah.
Okay, can you hear anything in the background, ma'am?
No,
I'm picking anything up on my end.
No, let me call her name. Let me call her name again. Kimber, baby, answer me. Kimber? No.
Okay, I'm going to get multiple agencies en route to assist, okay?
Okay, her front door's unlocked.
Okay, thank you for letting us know.
All right, okay.
Right.
Kimber, baby, I got you some help coming.
Jesse stays on the line. And then after a little while, you can faintly hear in the background over the phone someone shouting, "Anybody home?" The ambulance got there just 3.5 minutes after Jesse disconnected from 911.
You awake?
Jesse hears him say, "You awake?" Then, "Move that suitcase." And then she hangs up. It's easy to read the statistics and still not be able to imagine what the overdose crisis looks like in this country. More than 100,000 people die from an overdose each year. That means that Americans are now more likely to die from an overdose than from a car accident. This hotline's purpose is simple and very single-minded. It's not to get people sober or push them into treatment. It's just to keep people alive. One injection or snort after another. I wanted to know what it was like for everyone, the callers, and the people like Jesse, who sit there while someone uses, knowing they could die, right there on the phone. Jesse talks to people week after week, and sometimes they just stop calling. Maybe it's because they're not using anymore. Maybe it's because they're gone. Actual overdoses on the hotline don't happen that often, and Jesse had no way to know what went on after she hung up that day with Kimber. She kept answering calls on the line, tried to distract herself. She says she probably walked around her yard, poured herself a Sprite. Then she got a text from a pretty close friend of hers, a guy named Steven. He's a paramedic, so he sees a lot of overdoses. She has him in her phone as bruh.
He said, "What up, homie?" I said, "Oh, just living the dream, taking some calls, and some NUA calls. What you doing?" He said, "You know I'm at work today, right?" And I'm like, "Oh, I forgot today's Saturday."
Stephen works in Massachusetts.
Texting back and forth, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I had a never use alone call. I had an overdose call in Massachusetts today." Immediately, her phone rings. It's him. Like, instead of texting, he wants to talk. She answers. He said, "Where?" I said, "Hold on, I don't remember." He said, "Bitch, where?" I said, "Bitch, I said, hold on, I got to go get the book. Damn." I opened the book. North Adams, Massachusetts. The sob that left this man's chest, I'll never forget. He said, "That was me." Act 2. Stephen. Stephen Murray, the paramedic who responded to that overdose call Jesse took, he had a lot of jobs before working in an ambulance, each with a very different uniform.
The first was a black t-shirt. He was in a metal band. Then, a suit and tie. When he was in college, he ran for a seat on the village council and won. Being a paramedic meant wearing a button-up with S. Murray on one pocket and a badge above the other. He carried his dispatch radio pretty much everywhere, which is how he got the call that day.
So, it came in as a unresponsive possible overdose. That's all we really got. And when I heard the address, I was like, oh, that's really close by.
It was right up the hill from the ambulance station, basically on the same street.
We're only like 0.4, 0.5 miles away. So I jump in.
How many people?
It was one engine company, 3 police cruisers, and 2 ambulances. We get there and I'm looking at the building and there's multiple units within this big house.
He bangs on the door, doesn't hear anything. Then he sees a little stairway, runs up, finds another door, which is unlocked. He lets himself in.
I'm like, hello, anybody here? EMS? With the cops that are behind me, they're yelling out, and I'm looking around, and I get down this hallway.
At the end, there's a little bathroom.
And I find a girl laying on the ground. Or a woman laying on the ground. But she was very small. And she looked really young. And she was blue. And so I was like, crap.
Why? Hold it, why?
Well, because nobody's there. And she's blue. When someone's blue, I know they're not breathing.
You thought you were too late.
Yeah, that's where my mind went immediately, was that here's somebody who's alone. She's blue on the ground. And I find her pulse, and it's quite slow. So it's in the 40s. So I turned to the cop and said, she's got a pulse. The bathroom is quite small, though, and I'm big, and it's really hard to work on somebody when you can't kneel down next to them. And so I put my arms under hers, and I drag her into the living room, down the hallway to the living room. And at that point, the rest of my crew had brought all of our equipment upstairs. So they came up and put down our bag next to me.
If they'd gotten there a few minutes later, it might have been too late. But now, they had a chance. Steven's got a particular way he likes to handle overdoses that he feels is easier on the people being revived. Because he's thought about this a lot. If they do come to, it's going to be a very strange experience. Some random guy leaning over you, face upside down. And if you just give someone a big dose of Narcan, it'll throw them into withdrawal. People sometimes wake up angry. They'll have a massive headache because they might not have been getting oxygen to their brain. That lack of oxygen, that's what'll kill you in an overdose. So Steven starts by fixing that.
So I grabbed the bag valve mask out, hooked up to oxygen, and started to breathe for her. And in the meantime, I directed one of my staff members to draw me up to pull out Narcan and put a needle on it, because I like to give it intramuscularly because I can control the dose better.
He has the police stand in another room while he works.
Well, because the thing is, I've seen people come out and vomit and feel unwell. And when I first started EMS, I remember the police would be standing over them what did you use? Yelling at them. I started to think about what is that environment like when they wake up? If there are too many people in the room, I will tell people to go wait outside.
So Steven's kneeling over Kimber's head, squeezing oxygen into her lungs, one breath at a time. Then he gives her the smallest dose of naloxone, just to see how she'll react.
Her color improves, her oxygen saturation comes up, and she then wakes up.
Do you remember what she said to you?
She looked upset.
Upset, despite all his effort, but alive. There's a conversation Steven sometimes has with people he's revived. He doesn't remember where it happened with Kimber, but often it's in the back of the ambulance, where the driver can't hear. The patient will say something like, "You're so much nicer than the other EMTs." And then Steven will explain, "I've been in your shoes." So Steven, the person who revived Kimber from her overdose, he'd also survived an overdose. Let me tell you what happened. Steven started using drugs sometime after he stopped touring with that metal band. He'd been straight edge then, so no alcohol, no drugs. But then he went to college, University of Miami, and academics had never been his thing.
The people that I fell in with, my group of friends, we all met at the tables that were outside the dorms, and we would smoke cigarettes outside. It was this thing. And the guy that used to sell us our weed, he was great. He was just this really cool, I can't even describe him. He was he would show up with a fishing tackle box full of drugs. It was a menu, right? And he knew that I had been struggling a bit.
A friend of the group named Kelly had died recently. She'd fallen off a balcony. Really kind of rocked Steven's world.
And so he was if I remember right, he was oh, you should try these, will make you feel better. And that was oxycodone.
So drugs became part of Steven's very busy life. He's going to school, working a campus job. He'd also won that seat on the local village council.
At the time, they were saying I was the youngest elected official that had ever happened in South Florida. I don't know if that's verifiable, but that's what people were saying about me. And and here I am using drugs the whole time.
He used in his car before talking to TV news. Before bed, he would lay out lines of oxy for when he woke up at night in withdrawal. It was the only way he'd get back to sleep. And he was getting way too skinny.
I used to wear baggier clothes when I would talk to my parents. This is the era when Skype was a thing. And I used to put under eye concealer on my eyes because I have sort of naturally dark circles under my eyes. But because I had lost so much weight and was so sunken in, they were very pronounced. And so I would put under eye concealer on before I would go on camera with my parents.
Wow.
And actually the camera would be faced backward where I had all my accolades on the wall, certificate of election from the Board of Elections. And I got a letter from a congressman congratulating me on being elected. And just those things behind me. But on the other side of the camera, my life was chaos. So, yeah.
Steven thinks he probably OD'd twice somewhere in there, but luckily he came to on his own. None of that stopped him. His family at some point had an intervention, which he said you could see a mile away. He walked into the room and everyone was sitting there and no one was saying anything. And he was oh, I know what this is. But he felt relieved to be found out. He only had to go to rehab once, but recovery was a long process. Steven tried various jobs, ran out of money, went back to living with his folks. They were retired in Western Massachusetts, where he noticed they were looking for volunteer firefighters. So he signed up, and for some reason, it stuck.
In my head and in my mind, I'm I'm Steven the addict.
Yeah.
And now I'm Steven the firefighter. And it was I'm a firefighter. That's pretty cool.
Eventually, he became a paramedic. Steven's experience with addiction is not what made saving Kimber so emotional for him, though. It was something else. Back when Steven was using, his drugs were coming from pain clinics known as pill mills. But by the time he became a paramedic, many of those had been shut down. More and more people were getting drugs off the street. That's when fentanyl entered the scene. Fentanyl can be 50 times stronger than heroin. It was causing these cluster overdoses. Steven would see them from his ambulance. He'd have days where he'd go to 5 ODs one after another. He was seeing more people die, too. One case stuck with him. Everything went wrong. They were at the station when he got the call.
And the street address that was given, we'll say, for example, that was 313, 313. And we get there and there is no 313.
This isn't that uncommon, but usually someone hears the sirens and comes out, says, "We're over here."
And so in this particular case, that didn't happen. And so we just start to go knock on doors and look. And so that went on. We knocked on a bunch of doors and nobody ever came out. And so the other thing that dispatch will try to do is they'll try to call the person back repeatedly. Nobody answered on the call back. And so, eventually we have like finite resources. And so the next calls are coming in and like we have to move on.
A little while later, a different call comes in. A call about a dead body. A woman. Stephen hears the location and realizes this was the overdose victim from that original call. In fact, Stephen had knocked on her very door. Whoever called 911 the first time, they'd mixed up the numbers. So it wasn't 313, it was 133, something like that. So when Stephen and the cops fanned out, went house to house, Stephen had craned his neck to look in the window of the right building, but he just couldn't see the woman who needed his help. She was just out of view.
She was right around the corner from the door that I had looked in. And I just thought to myself, like, I was like 6 feet from her. And like when I got there, she was probably, we could still have saved her. And that was actually somebody that I had reversed an overdose on in the past. I hadn't stayed in real touch, but like she worked in the community, so I would see her sometimes.
Stephen played this over and over again in his mind, looking for ways it could have gone differently. He understood that whoever called 911, they were doing what they could to keep this woman alive. But they were also scared. Scared that when someone like Stephen showed up, there would be trouble. So, they left. And in the end, it was leaving this woman alone that killed her. It meant Stephen couldn't find her. That overdose call solidified something for Stephen. With the drug supply getting more dangerous, keeping people who use drugs safe meant making sure they weren't left by themselves. It was sometime around then that he heard about the Never Use Alone hotline, and it immediately made sense. So he got involved. Zoom meetings, stuff like that. That's how he met Jesse. To get the word out where he was, he made these little cards.
I made this simple design on Vistaprint, and I'm not a web designer or a graphic designer, so it looks terrible, but basically it was this is the Massachusetts line, here's the number, this is what we do. And so I used my credit card and bought 5,000 of those.
He convinced programs that give out clean syringes to include these Never Use Alone cards in their kits. Stephen had no idea if any of this was really working. A lot of times he'd talk to drug users who said, "What, I'm going to call up some stranger, tell him I'm about to inject dope? Are you kidding?" But a few hours before he revived Kimber, she had gotten one of these cards, bundled up with the stuff she'd picked up at a needle exchange. That was why she called. That was the thing that saved her life. Stephen didn't know that, though. When he dragged her out of the bathroom that day and started giving her rescue breaths, there was a cell phone right next to her. He just didn't put two and two together. After Kimber opened her eyes, Stephen told her she had to go to the hospital for observation. That meant she had to do this walk of shame down her front steps and climb into the back of the ambulance. It was nearly summer, but she put on her big winter coat, pulled up the hood. Stephen started packing up. Before he left the scene, he went to check in with his crew.
So they had the back doors of the ambulance open, and I stepped up into the back to talk to them. And it dawned on me again, oh, she was alone. So I said something along the lines of whoever was here with you called and left. You need to tell them never to do that again. They need to stay with you until we get here. And then she said, I wasn't with anybody, I was alone. And then I said, well, then who called 911? And then she said, I called the Never Use Alone hotline.
Oh my God, he thought. When he got back to the station, that's when he started texting Jesse. And that's when it all kind of came out of him.
When she told me that she was the operator, I started crying. I couldn't believe it. We sobbed on the phone together. I was in my office. There was this conference room thing that I was in, and I had the door closed and I was talking to her, and I'm just in there crying with her. And, it was wow.
Stephen says, over his time as a paramedic, he pronounced maybe 30 people dead from an overdose. All of them were alone. Kimber was alone too, but she had the line. The line had worked. It's so rare to find something that actually protects people once they're dealing with an addiction. But even when you save someone from an overdose, it doesn't mean they'll stop using. In fact, usually they don't. The morning after Stephen revived Kimber, Jessie sent her a text. "Hi," she wrote. "I am so thankful you called." She sent this with a little smiley face and a green heart emoji. Within a couple of hours, Kimber wrote back. She thanked Jessie, asked how many times she got Narcaned. Then, Kimber says, "I want to use again this morning, but I'm terrified." "If you use again today," Jessie replied, "the likelihood of you ODing again is almost guaranteed."
Mary Harris. Coming up, what's Jessie's deal? Also, a fight in a Krispy Kreme parking lot. That's in a minute. From Chicago Public Radio, when our program continues.